Good morning. Today is May 14th, 2013, and it is 7:27 a.m. It's Tuesday. I was watching a video on Transcendentalism this morning, and it stimulated some thought. In general, it stimulated the thought about conflicts. I guess conflict is a general theme in human existence. We often have a conflict between not too much of this and not too much of that, finding a balance. Balance is in the center of conflict. You've got the balance in the center, and you've got the conflicting things that need to be balanced, or the opposing things that need to be balanced, however you want to think about it, on either side of the center. Compare it to a human body, right? The center of the body, on either side if you wanted to. Regarding transcendentalism, generally what's being transcended are social constructs for the purpose of becoming more authentic, more real, more oneself, as opposed to being defined by one's social groups, one's job, one's church, even one's family. They're transcending all that to try to find out who they really are in themselves. And that is if you were to think of it as religion, that would be the goal of the religion. If you were to think of the master of the religion as a sage, the sage would be the person who had been able to discover himself apart from the social structures into which he was born. The question would come up, how much are you discovering of yourself versus how much are you creating of yourself? I would say it's not an either or. I would say it's a both and. I would say some of who we are is given via our genetics and perhaps via however much of our environment cannot be scrubbed off, our upbringing. And perhaps it shouldn't be scrubbed off. If we were lucky enough to be raised well, then we're going to have a lot that we've gotten from our upbringing that we should retain. The next question that I'd like to consider is, how much strike that. The next question I'd like to consider is, how should we balance our self with social existence? I think there's a danger in either extreme. I think it's a mistake to be completely subsumed, completely consumed by social constructs, completely defined, including the ideals that advertising likes to foist upon us. I think there's also a danger in going to the other extreme. And becoming completely selfish, completely irresponsible. Man is a social being. So for me, the question seems to be, how do you find the appropriate balance, the appropriate middle ground between knowing oneself and being one's authentic self? In other words, one's real self, one's true self, being true to oneself, and also being a member of social groups, including the family. Perhaps the method of analyzing piece by piece which social constructs we have internalized as individuals, and then rejecting those which don't further what we'll consider important or legitimate social ends, can be discarded. We probably will find, I'm sure, times when we do strike that. I think that we can both be an authentic self and avoid being selfish. Next, it occurs to me to ask, why does any of this matter? It seems to rest on a concern with living well, which is ethics. What's the good life for man? I think we're back to that, and that's why all this matters. What's the best way to live? What's the good life? I suppose I could have introduced this little video with that. So I think part of the good life is going to have to be balancing one's social self with one's individuality? Can they be integrated? I imagine that the happiest person, or the perhaps I could say instead, the person who most flows easily through social life would be the person who has best been able to integrate the two. That would require one to engage in societies, groups, in other words, that are harmonious with one's individual self. Also, I think it would involve the courage to be oneself, the confidence to be oneself, while one is in social groups. Now, I'm not advocating doing foolish things to alienate other people in the group. I'm not advocating social incompetence, or I do believe that we do need social intelligence. I do believe that you don't want to always show your cards. Sometimes I do believe you need to keep your true thoughts to yourself. I don't see any self-betrayal in that. I suppose the real self-betrayal would come at the point where one allows oneself to believe what social groups want its members to believe, just because it's easier to go along than it is to live with the cognitive dissonance of knowing the social group is that the social group's position is different from one's own. So that's all for now. It's time to go to work. I'll talk to you again.